experiences. Oh, yes. Thank you, Rob. Good job. I'm not going to redo that speech. Sorry, peeps. Anyways, we're going over the agenda real quick. We could talk about different value exchange models that we may be curious about or want to explore more. We could take some time to look at things that we already know are a part of membership, such as the whole person resume and what that means, how to use Coordinate being our current value exchange tokenizing tool. And then if anybody wants to add to that, please do. We could have some time to talk about current operations in terms of keeping the lights on. So the second half of our meeting is going to be that bigger strategy workshopping time that Rob and Christine are going to take us through. But while we're visioning and while we're strategizing the next 3 to 6 months, things need to happen. Things are happening and will continue to happen. So we may check in about who's down for what. And then, I don't know why that's in tiny print at the end of my agenda. It's tiny. If there's time, update your needs and offerings. We'll see about that. Rob and Christine, do you want to say anything about your part of the meeting right now? Or do you want to wait?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a few sort of context pieces that I think will be helpful, as we go along, and especially in the second part of the meeting. I don't know. I mean, Christine, what do you think? Anything that feels generative to pop in now? I sort of feel okay with. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, maybe before we do discussing the value exchange pieces, then we could, if you wanted to give some introduction about the things that we were just talking about before the meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, but then we could do that other activity first, the one about sharing our experiences. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay. I also just want to do a little take the temperature of the group. Kimberly had just let us know that she's here for the first hour of our time together. Basil or anyone else who is here now but won't be here later, could you just let us know that now if you have the information?
Yeah, I think I have to dip out at the hour.
Okay. Basil, if you are free to respond, that would be helpful. Because Rob and Christine, we could flip the agenda depending on this kind of question. Or we could change it and do the share piece and then do some of the visioning workshopping piece before a few of us need to go.
Yeah,
okay.
That's a good,
Basil
good
may
question.
be listening. Basil is texting us. I'm listening. I may only be here for this first hour or so. So
yeah, I mean, it all seems like great stuff to go over. There is something I wouldn't mind, even if it was just 20 minutes or a half hour, to go into some of the workshopping and strategy, just to get folks input who are here and capture that. I think that feels like it'd be great.
awesome. I love that. So how about we do this this sharing piece and then I'll pass it over to you all for some of the workshopping strategy stuff. And then we can assess, the group will get smaller at some point, then we can assess what we do at that point. Okay. All right, great. Cool. So, we've all been part of systems and organizations, whether those organizations were like our college education or somewhere we worked or a family system that we are a part of or are not a part of anymore, whatever it is, we've all been in these like webs of connection and humans trying to be social/productive and get things done. And so just reflecting on that, what are some of those experiences that have been especially meaningful to you, pros and cons? And I mean, really, I listed a bunch of questions in the agenda. And so you could share from whichever angle sort of speaks to you. Whether it's what went really well, what would you do differently? Was there a paradigm shift involved? Now that question I really love because that's what we're doing here. We're wanting to shift a lot of paradigms. And so do you have experience with that? Did you try to shift a paradigm and bump up against, the establishment in some way? Are you gun shy because of that? Who knows, right? It could be so many things. And then I like to bring in this awareness about our embodiment also. When we're in a group or trying to be in a group or trying to change a paradigm, we can feel a lot of things. We can feel scared. We can feel excited. We can feel like we want to move ahead, but we're pulling this 1,000-pound weight of like everybody else who doesn't see it or doesn't want to come on this trip. And we could also share about that if that seems like what's up for you. So I think popcorn style is great. Yeah. Does anybody have something popping?
I guess I can start. I had a chat with the organizers of Inspiral, which is a group that is a collective of small businesses basically in Australia and New Zealand. And they have a lot of experience. They've tried a lot of things from starting as a freelancer agency and doing work together, and then realizing that that wasn't working. And that there was a few things that they just couldn't overcome in that setting. And then moving to this more membership-based model where everyone holds their own businesses, and then there's just other ways of finding connections, where it's more personal and organic rather than necessarily always working on projects. So it was great to get that experience and to hear from them, because I think Inspiral's been around for about 13 years or so. And yeah, that made me reflect on a lot of just thoughts, hopes, possibilities, and past experiences. And yeah, I shared that with Rob and trying to create some kind of reflection, I guess, there, but that's still happening. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. I love this topic. What's coming to mind for me is when I was on the board of a group organizing a local dance event here weekly years ago, and the sort of interesting evolution of an organization that already existed for 30 years and had some senior members of leadership who set the tone for a lot of what we were doing. And for lack of a better word, like they got entrenched in how things had always been done. And even though we were presumably a consensus-based decision-making board, this one person still dominated the tone of the organization and was unwilling to hear and evolve into what the times were calling for. And that was challenging. I don't think we did a great job dealing with that. And some of us, for a variety of reasons, but partly because of this stuckness, like stepped away from the board. And that dance event died to be replaced by other events organized by the next generation of event producers. And so it's a curiosity for me and a cautionary experience of like, when there's a figurehead kind of person in an organization, well, how do we deal with that or not deal with that? Or how do I not become that? And also, how do we evolve? How do we, that we're like a baby infant organization right now. That was an organization in its 30s, like that couldn't turn the page to the next chapter. So that's what I want to say for the moment.
That inspired me, so maybe I'll go next. Cool. It's nice to meet you, Christine, finally. I really liked hearing about Inspiral. I just Googled them. Very cool. I'd love to hear more about Inspiral at some point. And what Saya was saying resonated with me, especially because I have this fear of becoming that person in an organization who gets really set in the way we do things. And so I'm part of another organization, a lot of you know already, the International Strategy Center. And we've been around for about 13 years, like in Spiral similar. And I've been there for like 7. So, however, I am maybe like the 4th oldest person at the organization. And when my routine gets kind of messed up, I go chaotic and I get frazzled. So I love a good routine and I love a good system of operations. But now there are lots of new people in the organization, which is great. But they're kind of like coming in and proposing all these new things with all this new energy, which is great. But I'm seeing in myself, oh, I have to know when to be flexible and know when to give up an old system and listen to the changing times and mood. So yeah, what Saya said resonated with what I'm encountering in my own, I guess, stepping out of my own comfort zone with that organization. I don't know. What else is interesting to share here? If a question comes up, maybe I'll answer it, but I don't really understand the prompt yet. But nice to meet you, Christine. Whoever wants to go next.
I mean, I could share some things with Steve's, but I don't know how much value there is in it at this point. It was very young, and a lot of what you just said, Zoe, came up with it. It was lots of new people coming in and everyone having an idea, and then so that's when we really didn't have the tools, and we certainly didn't have the structure yet to really deal with that. And so that's going to be really important. It's all the structure's got to be there. And whatever tools that we need to be there. I do though think that we could simultaneously And then it could fail miserably, but I'm gonna put it out there that we could actually do some sort of a test project, you know, once we get the governance done and we start looking at, you know, how to make this work operationally. And that's really all I've got to say at the moment.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kim. Yeah, what popped in, you know, as people were talking was, you know, my time living in intentional community. Yeah, I really, have a, you know, place in my heart for intentional communities. You know, and there's all different kinds, and you know, it's always, you know, fascinating. You know, there's one that I was really involved in for a while that's still here in Massachusetts called Serious Community. And it's been around, I guess, I don't know, maybe like 45 years now. And so, you know, it's amazing, right? And it's like, it's not always easy, yeah, you know. And I think one of the lessons there, you know, is that you know, there does have to be kind of like or it feels like, you know, like some sort of shared goal or shared purpose that everybody is you know, coming together around, and also that it has you know, like enough like people who are, you know, have capacity and bandwidth, you know, to like hold the community. Because a lot of times, especially in, you know, in certain communities, there's a group of people that are coming in that don't have a lot of capacity or bandwidth or doing a lot of healing. And yeah, so, you know, I think to have a you know, a mix is better than if everybody's just like coming together and, you know, with good intentions, but not a lot of capacity. You know, and that reminds me, I don't know, it was a little bit, it was, you know, I lived in an intentional community. It was a house, and it was like one house, you know, and 11 people, and, you know, like one refrigerator. And, you know, I think we did pretty well, and it was a fun experiment. But, you know, it was interesting to see that, you know, even though it was really meant to be like a, you know, a group process, it sounds kind of similar to Kim. Like there weren't a lot of like tools and structures. And in the end, the person who owned the house, you know, ended up really, you know, making most of the decisions, even if that's not how we wanted it to go, you know. And then it kind of disbanded. So yeah, those are my experiences there coming through.
I've been thinking a lot in the last 6 months of looking at things developmentally, and you could think about that as like, you know, what age is an organization? Is it a teenager? Is it in its rebellion, identity forming phase? Is it in its midlife crisis? Is it, you know, like what, you know, you could think about it that way a little bit, like, oh, it's a baby, it's a toddler, you know, it's just finding its legs. But also developmentally, like there can be a progression where something gets sort of entrenched, and then the next wave is a revolution. It's reactive to the way things have been done. And then you get a reaction, and then it develops and matures, and then you get another reaction a few decades later or whatever. And it's kind of like the US political system. I mean, maybe that's a bad example, but I started to really question, like, well, how do we have incremental, useful change, which is about choosing what we want, not just reacting to what we don't want or what we don't relate with because we're the next up and coming generation, right? And we want to form our identity independent of what was already there. So I have a friend here who like wants to start a church in order to like change the world and save the world. And I think that's cool. Okay. But on the other hand, we got a lot of churches in town, probably full of good people with fundamentally good intentions. So we could go to their Sunday meetings, or we could start a whole new thing. I don't know if right or wrong, but it's something to consider. Sorry, that's my duck timer. Yeah. So I had set us like a 15-minute timer for this part of sharing, just to be sure that we check in. Do we want to stay on this topic for another 5 or so, or do we want to shift into some of the workshopping?
I say workshop. That's my vote.
Great. Let's do it. Well, that was fun. I hope you guys enjoyed that. I did.
Yeah,
I
me
took some
too.
notes too, so yeah.
I mean, I actually think that that last piece that you said, Saya, was like a perfect segue. You know, whether you meant it to be or not, you know, into like a workshopping. So yeah, if we're ready, I can jump into that, and then you know, Christine will jump in. But it's interesting to think about, like, where is HSC in our, you know, developmental framework? I don't know that I thought about it like that. You know, are we I'm probably past baby, you know, are we a toddler? Are we, you know, moving into our tween years or teen years? You know, certainly probably, I don't think an adult yet, but I think that that's a great question. And I think it does lead into, you know, part of this, you know, what's coming into shape in this workshopping aspect, which is like, what is our niche, you know? So, you know, I think that we're pretty clear on what is our niche as far as, you know, who we're, you know, who who is going to be here, you know, like freelancers, independent contractors, entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, you know, that seems, you know, fairly apparent. But I think been thinking about like, what is our niche in regards to, okay, like what is HSC doing? And some of that has come through, right, as been connecting with more people, you know, like, you know, Christine brought up, like with Inspiral, with, you know, other, you know, like GaiaNet, you know, and really sort of like trying to see what else is out there, you know, with the idea. I also think, like, you know, to speaking to Saya's point, right? Like, is there another church that's, you know, doing the same kind of thing we are? And, you know, do we, you know, grow ours parallel or, you know, join in together? And so you know, what's come in, and I think that this is just some helpful context, because especially with Christine, she's been really sort of, you know, helping drive things forward, because she's putting in, you know, a lot of work and doing a lot of research and processing, you know, just kind of processing everything that we've done, and then bringing in her, you know, her thoughts. So that's been you know, really helpful. So, you know, the just a couple context pieces, you know, for kind of like our workshopping and what our strategy is the first one is that I've been in contact with, you know, an organization called GaiaNet. Here, I'll put the GaiaNet. I think it's just GaiaNet.earth. You may have to put in the HTTPS or whatever. But it's an organization that I've been in contact with the folks there for, you know, a while, probably more than a year now, because we're doing like pretty similar things. And, you know, so I was in touch with last week with a representative from there, and then also somebody who's, you know, sort of worked with GaiaNet, but is doing things, you know, a little bit separately, separate, but not, you know, totally separate. And both of them were really, you know, doing parallel things, meaning like really like a base aspect is like this member portal and connecting different members, you know, and connecting, you know, different like working professionals and projects. And so what's come about is that there's ways where I think that we can be, you know, really teaming up on, we can be, it's a big possibility for collaboration, where there's things that we both might be building that we could just like build together and not redo our efforts. So, you know, I won't get too far into that because, you know, we're still exploring, but you know, the thing that came through that was helpful from these conversations, right, is that Guy Annette was talking a lot about what its sort of first step, its MVP is, you know, is like the one thing that it's doing. When I say niche, maybe this is what I'm talking about, but like, what is the one thing that they're concentrating on doing like now, right? Because they have, like we do, they have like big visions, you know, the visions of societal change, but like, where is their piece now, you know? And really they're talking about like, you know, this member portal, you know, member profiles, but like about the connecting of people. So they're really wanting to like connect people and projects, you know, in this kind of like new earth, you know, regenerative movement. And you know, and so what, you know, what Alexander said there that I thought was interesting was he's talking about like this connecting, which is not so much like they're like the portal to connect people, but they're not like you know, like so much concentrating now on like the community behind it, even though they do have like some community aspects, you know, but just like really like this sort of community that stays there, you know, rather than like people coming in through in and out. And I was thinking, okay, well, what, you know, where's HSC? What are we, you know, kind of doing? And really what, you know, seems to be the case, and I'm open, you know, for thoughts, is that we kind of are like more like the community of people who are coming together. And the words that came in, you know, was that we, you know, we are like a, you know, like a workers collective of freelancers and entrepreneurs who are capturing and synergizing the value, you know, in a way, so that way everybody in the community has access to more than they would, you know, by themselves. And so that's how we're helping, you know, get, you know, how we're helping each other, you know, support ourselves in a livelihood, you know, that has, you know, meaning and purpose, and also societal, you know, transformation. So, you know, with that in mind, it seems like this is just kind of the word that's coming in now, you know, but like this freelancers and entrepreneurs collective, but like, you know, it seems like what we might be doing that others aren't doing. And so what we might concentrate on is that sort of capturing value and synergizing the value, you know, and pooling that. So that's, you know, that's one context. Let me just look at my list here. There was one more thing that I thought. Oh yeah, you know, there's something, there's a practicality here as we're sort of you know, going forward with like what this roadmap might be, you know, which is that you know, like we can, so there's one aspect where I think that it's valuable for us to take as long as we need to take, you know, to go through this process and say, okay, what is our objectives, and you know, like what is the strategy, and what are we, you know, trying to do as, you know, as a group. But there is also, you know, another aspect, which is that, you know, Christine is here and is like, you know, has time, especially now within the next, you know, 3 months, to put in you know, a lot of, you know, effort and hours towards holistic systems. So I think there's a way where I also want to just, you know, be cognizant of that. And so to kind of say, what, you know, what can we be working on now, you know, and like what sort of tangible action steps can all of us, but then, you know, be working on, especially, you know, kind of Christine as you know, as she's here, you know, so not that she's going anywhere after 3 months, but just to say, like, you know, right, you know, yeah, capture that value. So that's what I wanted to share. And so, yeah, Christine, if you wanted to share kind of like this last main kind of piece of context, and then we can go through the Miro board.
Yeah, so I didn't have anything specifically about context like to share, but everything that Rob shared was what we've been talking about, sort of summarized over the last couple of weeks. And probably, let me just think. Yeah, so looking at what HSC can create internally as an experience feels to be the strongest piece that we could create, not only for the benefit of the members, but also as a model to share and to show, like to actually generate a working model that people can contemplate, see how it could work for them as well, and have it as a holistic system, if you will, that people can use in their own settings, whether that's communities or workplaces. So Rob and I were looking at that idea of revisiting that, which I heard that you guys had already touched on, like, I don't know at what point in the discussions of the last couple of years, but I had heard that specifically developing some sort of interactive value exchange model could be an offering of HSC. And so this is a way to focus the agency side of it rather than just everyone working on diverse projects all the time. And there's a lot of business risk involved in that, which is one thing I really picked up on from Inspiral, which if everyone is working under the name of HSC and there's like 100 freelancers, it's very hard to keep that business risk under control. So yeah, there's a few different ways of actually focusing the agency part of HSC that could bring some nice results and create a profile that HSC is proud of and give people opportunities for work. It may not be the only work that people do, but there would still be all the other value creation and exchange happening between the people who want to work together and who want to do stuff together, and all that sort of freer side of things. So it would be good to have some thoughts on that as well, because I guess, like, to what Kimberly had mentioned about having like a testing phase or testing different structures. Like Rob and I were just thinking, why not make sort of HSC like the testing bed kind of thing, like the test case that we just constantly keep iterating and keep trying and exploring things. And that might actually be inspiring for us, but then that also gives us more ground to then be advising other people like what to try and how to implement for themselves. So yeah, that's probably a key piece from our recent discussions. Yeah.
Thanks, Christine. Yeah, and we've kind of been, in shorthand calling it like the member token product or the member token model, but which is really just like this, kind of the utilizing tokens, and to, as the sort of the tool or the means, to capture and synergize this value to create this sort of community, collective where we can, make, have exchanges and pool our resources. So yeah, so why don't we, with all that, why don't we, maybe jump into the Miro board? I can share my screen, lightly jump in or dip our toe in. And first of all, I also think that it might be helpful to just, based on the kind of context or the, the things that Christine and I just talked about, also just open the floor if there's any, questions or comments, anything that popped in just around that. Cool. So, essentially this is basically the same sort of board that was here, last time. Our thought was really to to take kind of that context that we brought in, and to really just go, slowly and start like at the objectives. And to say, to kind of like maybe zoom in on each one, and start with the objectives, right? And of course, attached to that is the strategy. And I think that there is an aspect, as I was kind of processing through, last meeting, where I think, a lot of these little sticky notes, are things that we all have talked about, but it might actually be good to just sort of zoom out, now together as a group, and just, get like the basic idea, or hear from people like, what is our objective? Because essentially what we're doing, I think, is we're making this, right now we're making this leap, right? So we're we're clear on the purpose and vision and mission, and now we're kind of making the leap to, okay, so we know our mission, our purpose, and so then what are we, like, how are we trying to achieve that, essentially? So maybe we just kind of start fresh. I don't know that we need to, like, take all the sticky notes down, but maybe we can just kind of ignore them for a little bit and, start fresh and have, have input in that manner. And love to just, hear any thoughts and ideas, and some of the input, might just be like, like thumbs up on, if you are looking at some of the sticky notes, thumbs up on that. I think,
there's always the
yeah.
undo button. Press the undo
Oh
button.
yeah, Saya, do you want to do that?
It's
I think
me.
you have
I
to do
still don't know how to use the board.
No, it wasn't locked. It wasn't
Oh,
locked.
Oh.
lock me out, whatever you do.
Yeah, I know. It's such a, honestly, these
Oh.
boards are, Saya, can you do like a command or control Z? Yeah, there you go. All right.
I get it.
Yeah. All right, now let me just see if I can lock. Now, why is it? I don't know. We'll figure it out.
It looks locked now, I think.
Yeah. And right, so we also put in, like, right, that, like, we put in these sort of three, main frameworks that we're thinking about as far as, okay, our objective, we need, it's kind of like a lot of us were talking about in the, in the exercise we did with Saya, it's like we need, structures and frameworks. So that's one. And then we're talking about, the agency and then this value exchange community or co-op. Some of what might have come in from the agency, may have changed a little bit in the last week, but it's always a changing target. So, yeah, folks, what makes sense to folks? Do you want to kind of call, do you want to call stuff out, or should we give everybody, 5 minutes to just put in their stickies? Again, with the prompt of saying, like, we're just zooming out and start from the start. What are our objectives? What are we trying to achieve? How are we trying to achieve our purpose and mission? Does that feel clear? All right, well, why don't we take 5 minutes? And since everybody is here and can access this, why don't we take 5 minutes, and folks can put stickies on here, and if anybody can't access it, just shout it out or put it in the chat. Sound good? All right, I'm gonna set a timer. Oh, I can set one here too.
Oh, one thing I thought as well is that you can also just express a feeling or like the energy that you want to achieve. It doesn't have to be like a really specific goal.
It was me again, sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Christine. So I actually, if you click on the big thing, if there's like a lock, you could actually click that lock and that should lock it. I thought that if one of us locked it, it locked it for everybody, but maybe that's not true.
Mm.
I also don't think the stickies necessarily have to be, color coded perfectly. You can also sign your sticky if you feel inspired.
I'll just be back in a minute.
Okay, by all means, continue to drop anything on the board that you like, but I know, you know, some folks have to leave pretty soon. So let's, you know, I think that the other thing that we, you know, the idea, you know, for this, the other thing that we could, you know, try and do was to, you know, just go over the, you know, kind of what folks are thinking about for the objectives and the strategy. And then, you know, if there's time, you know, talk about how that would, you know, inform the you know, the different task forces. So why don't we start with governance? And why don't I just read through, and then you know, folks can comment, and we can see is, you know, if that kind of creates a clear objective, at least, you know, for now. So have an MVP governance method that the group of people involved you know, can use for the next 6 months. Ideally be able to vote on proposals by the entire community in smaller circles, MVP governance structures, and organized, free-flowing, good response time. So it's nice. Have a process we feel comfortable with to make decisions that the group that needs group consensus. Process we feel comfortable with to make decisions that need group consensus. Okay. So question, oh yeah, does HIFA have any of these frameworks as a recommendation to provide a task force, like templates for strategy building? You know, it's a good question. I think that it's, you know, governance, there's like a ton of information and, you know, different kind of methodologies that different organizations are utilizing. And since, you know, so I think there's a way where we could take what other folks have done, you know, like HIFA, you know, and others, and utilize it and start using it as kind of an MVP. I think governance doesn't have to take, you know, like as far as like coming up with our governance model, I don't know that has to take, you know, lots and lots of effort. It's more just like picking something we like and trying it out, you know, because that's, you know, that's not like the exact kind of mission and purpose of this community, you know, to like create governance models. So, okay, oh yeah, gather templates, have governance task force. So, okay, I'll try and put this into like a prompt so that I can ask. So it sounds like, you know, basically what we're saying is we you know, we'd like to get an MVP governance structure in place that the group can use to you know, make decisions that people feel comfortable with, and begin to you know, try out a framework. You know, so it doesn't have to be you know, too complex at first, just something that we think, okay, this can work, and this kind of meets our objectives. How does that sound for folks? Does that sound, should we do like a yay or nay, thumbs up or thumbs down kind of thing? Are there polls? Cool. Kim? All right.
I think actually just one note I added to that section just then was basically just having a working asynchronous communications, like method, so that if people are working on things between meetings, or if they miss a meeting, what's the best way that people can still be having input to things that they need to have input on, and yeah, just having that workflow clearer there so that there's decisions being made in a way that people like, and that helps the projects basically.
Cool. Agreed. Explore different types of value exchange models. So here, you know, let me see if I can summarize, and then I turn it into a prompt, but I'd love to get feedback because this seems like our biggest piece right now. Well, yeah, different types of value exchange models. That's good. I mean, I just put, you know, trying to summarize, again, that's what came through today, is a way to capture and synergize value, you know, within a group community. You know, a lot of these things are sort of like the method how to do that, you know, a member portal, membership agreements, you know, exchange and earn tokens, paying members. But I think that, you know, it seems like what we're talking about now for like this step where we're at in this developmental step is to co-develop and you know, test, you know, as a community, this method of resource pooling, value exchange with the, you know, like you know, as a collective, with the idea that it's going to, you know, by that doing that is going to help, you know, everybody involved, you know, meet our group goals, you know, which is earn a meaningful livelihood, while also creating these, you know, societal, you know, models for transformation, and while also, you know, maybe creating like a model that actually is, you know, could be an amazing offering. And you know, and doing this using like this kind of member portal with, you know, tokens as a method of tracking and exchanging value. That's my summary. So yeah, would folks, okay, there's a couple of questions here. So I'd love to just go along with everybody and get like a, yeah, that sounds like what I'm thinking, or no, here's some, you know, not quite, here's some other pieces, or no, not at all, or questions, concerns, issues. Anybody feel inspired to start and go around the circle?
Could we just say that if someone doesn't speak, that's just implied consent?
I'm okay with that.
I'm aware of the time and that some participants are going to need to move on with their day pretty soon. And I wonder if it makes sense to zoom out a little bit and talk about, like, are we ready for some proposals? For example, like Christine does have time to put in right now that not all of us have. We have varying degrees of like time and energy, resources, and bandwidth. And, you know, here's my proposal in the moment that we, before people leave, assess, are we ready for those who have time and bandwidth to start formulating some proposals for what the task forces could be and what some of those next steps could be? I don't know that we all want to even take this whole Miro board and all individually and collectively process it. But there may be some people who are, and Rob and Christine, you built this. This is an amazing amount of work and really valuable, but we may not all have the bandwidth to like go through it in detail together. So in some decision-making models, I would put forward a proposal, someone would second it, and then we would vote, right? I'm gonna shut up now and let somebody else say something.
I think proposals are a great idea. I think that it's really difficult to get anywhere if we don't have something that's tangible on the table.
Yeah,
And, okay, great. So do we agree that forming task forces as a next step makes sense? Like listing what the task forces are, bringing that forward to the next meeting. Okay, you guys have it already. I guess that's what I'm wondering. What can we, especially those of you who know this mural board really well.
Okay.
yeah. Well, I think that's I think that is the next step, because I think that, you know, and it's basically exactly kind of what you're saying, Saya. I think that if we divide up into certain task forces, then those task forces are the ones that are going to put in the proposals.
Yeah.
You know, and then it's not like there's just one big entity, you know, putting in proposals, but it's like, okay, these are the task forces. And so, you know, there could be, right, the first proposal of each task force is probably like, hey, we want to form this task force, and this is the purpose of it, you know, and then propose that. You know, I mean, we could go through and do that quickly. But does that sound that seems like the way to get the proposal started?
Yeah, I think that's clear, like to me anyway, that the task force are the way to focus proposals, because like as more people, as if you join a task force, then you're sort of drilling in to become more focused and knowledgeable in that area. So people are going to have more insight about what needs to be formed, like what the proposal will look like to bring to the group. Is I guess the general idea there. But were you questioning, Saya, like about the idea of task forces generally? Is that what you're thinking?
I was stepping it back that far, and then also thinking like those of you who know this, who are really digging into this material, you could come to the whole group and say, these are the task forces we see necessary now. And we may not need all of these right now, but that those of you who are really looking at all of this in great detail could come forward and say, hey, this is what we think is important now as task forces. And actually, this is how we define the top 3 task forces. Like, we don't have that many active members. So we need to be realistic about where people can put energy now or soon and what that means. So
yeah, I think we thought the governance task force was probably the first place to start, because then that can set up how the other task force function, and deciding like what's the best way to communicate, what's the way that people need to make decisions together, and how to bring that to the main group, or how to bring that to the meetings. So yeah, that would be the ideal place to start. And it doesn't, as Rob said, it doesn't have to take months and months to come to some consensus. It could just be a couple of meetings, and then we have a basic working model to start with. Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
I like where you're going, and I'm gonna have to go. I've got to go to a work thing. So tally ho, keep going.
I see you put yourself on the
Thank you,
governance
Kimberly.
task force.
I
That's cool.
did. Very
Yeah.
limited, and yeah, we'll see how that goes. But because I don't have a lot of experience with it or knowledge, but
Yeah.
I'm certainly willing to give it a shot.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thanks,
thank you.
Kim.
Thank you.
see ya.
Good to
Thanks,
see you.
Kim.
Good to see you.
Thanks for showing up and your input. And, and I know, so I'm just gonna I just want to back us up just one more second, and also while Zoe is here. And then I can let it go. But basically, like, when I was talking here, I did my sort of like general summary of what this objective is. And, Kim was, consented with, with silence. Is there anybody else, does everybody else kind of consent to that, as of now, that's our sort of like first go at an objective?
For the resource sharing?
Yeah, on the resource sharing, because I think that's, like once we get the governance going, I think that is like that's the first piece that we're really going to be concentrating on. I think that the agency piece is going to, come alongside whenever it makes sense. So, yeah. So how I summarized it, does that sound, Saya, Zoe, Basil, if you're listening, is that?
I don't remember your exact summary right now, but what I'm seeing in this field makes sense to me as the next iteration. Yes.
Cool. Thank you. That's awesome. That's exciting. And then we can, right. So this also, just to say, this Miro board, right, is going to be like our living document. So, at any point, right, we can come here and add, new sticky notes. You think, oh, I have a question now popped in about that I think would be good to share with folks, or a desire. We can always bring it in here. All right. So thank you for zooming back there. And now we're zoomed here on task forces. So we're talking, so that's great. So we're talking about task forces and then proposals. Also, I'll save it for another time. So then really, like, there's the governance task force, and then what do we think? Is the strategy task force kind of the group that's going to get together and say, like, hey, this is what we think as far as, like our general strategy, and from there, these would be the other task forces? Or is there another way to do this? Any thoughts, Christine, or anyone?
Yeah, I think probably just over long term, it would be good to have a strategy task force. Or it doesn't have to be called a task force, it could be a strategy circle. Like that, people who do have the bandwidth, who actually want to work on strategy ongoing, can join that circle. And if need be, different task force can come out of that. So yeah, I guess the invitation is there, right, Rob, to everyone in the group to be a part of strategy. And like the idea was also potentially, if we need input from like advisors or people who are out in the community who are also building other things, and they can perhaps then relate with the strategy circle, so that we've got a place for them to actually land and give us input, and have that as like where we're building a resource specifically for that nature.
Yeah, I'm trying to put circle under here, but it's doing some weird thing. Oh, here, I've got it. It's like zoom you right in. Yeah, and I think that kind of speaks to, we're calling them task forces now. I think that does speak to, like, to me where we'd go as far as, where I'm envisioning, like the organizational structure is this kind of holonic, this nested circle, decentralized organizational structure where these things are, are circles. So that way the strategy circle remains, even if, Rob needs to leave it or Christine needs to leave it. And then that also, starts to get into, like governance, which is like, you know, once these circles are established, it would be nice if there's always at least like one person kind of holding the circle. So that way, you know, if Rob and Christine both decide to bail from the strategy circle, then it's not like just an empty circle, because then that'd be sad. Yeah. Yeah, thanks, Christine.
I think other organizations might call it something different. We could just start with strategy circle. It could even merge, governance and strategy could merge, like if we felt there wasn't that much to do in governance ongoing, like we just set it up, but yeah, see how we go.
That sort of answered my question. Because, like, after we've established a functional governance method or system, like, will the governance task force be needed in the long run? Maybe here and there, but maybe they will merge with strategy or something later. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
maybe
maybe that might turn into like an operations, you know, circle, you know, who's then sort of like you know, sort of going along and saying, hey, you know, like, how's our, you know, governance working? And this is, yeah, and kind of facilitating that maybe rather than coming up with it.
Okay.
Yeah. I like that. Okay, so people, yeah, so people have and can put, you know, I think it's good to put where you're, you know, any of these task forces or circles where your interests lie. You know, even if it's something where you're like, I don't have, you know, I'm not able to work on it now. Then you can do that again at any time. This Miro board is open.
I'm having a hard time putting my name on a block because I don't know how to visualize each task force yet completely. The kind of amalgamous in my brain. I don't know. Yeah, maybe watching them develop a bit more might help, but my name not being there now doesn't mean I'm not interested. Just don't know where to put it.
Totally. That
Question
makes
is
perfect sense.
strategy is this endeavor going to involve a business? So business strategy, like does this endeavor involve finance, money, finance, investment, workforce, payroll, accounts receivable, accounts payable? You know, the tokenization I see there, but you know, that's for value. That's for non-fiat valuation. You know, equity essentially, no, or some sort of tokenomics model.
Yeah, I think there's a note. It might be in the agency section actually at the moment, but it says building the minimum viable internal ops to support agency to function. So that's legals, accounting, contracts, HR, software, procedures, etc.
Yeah, that's like multiple full-time jobs just in that.
Yeah, we know. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, you know, to answer your question,
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, I think so. I think that the strategy circle is what, you know, is like that first step to saying, oh, okay, well, we want to do this, right? Like our objective is this. So now, yeah, we're going to need, you know, some financial, you know, a financial flow circle, or we're going to need this. We're going to, if we wanted to do a business, we're going to need all this. And so then these are the sort of circles that we create to do that. So Basil, I think that, I think that's a yes.
Okay.
And I think, right, that's also then part of this kind of strategy circle is like, what can we do now? You know, I think that right, like maybe this, the strategy circle, and maybe this is what's coming from the meeting, is saying, is starting to think about like the plan and the implementation and the roadmap. And so they could get together and say, hey, this is what we think we want to concentrate on first. These are the circles that we, think should be active first. These like what we're proposing for the plans, and this is what we, feel like then the roadmap would look like.
Yeah, we started off with just a couple of task force names there, but they keep expanding. And that maybe there's a way to organize them better for sure. Because having a structure of circles with that whole task forces would seem to be more ideal. I mean, as a starting place. But that would be a governance question, I suppose. And we have to form the task force for the governance to get there. Yeah, so it's sort of like, which piece comes first? And yeah, which piece comes first? That's probably a good way to look at it there.
Yeah. I think, I think there's a lot of so it feels like a lot of progress, thank you, for, and sort of like, zooming in and saying, okay, like we, feels like in general, like we are all on the same page. And so the people who, have time and, ability to, start making the plans and proposals, create the proposals, and then the group votes on them. Utilizing, right, the sort of first governance framework that we put in. And then that allows us to kind of get going.
Yeah,
and it
because
allows people, people to participate.
Yeah, one thing I was thinking that has come to mind in the last couple of weeks is that, do we have enough members, or is there enough members in HSC to even play around enough? So like to build that minimum test case scenario. And I kind of wonder that potentially there's not. So we need to have something in order to even bring more test case ground level experimentees on. Yeah. Does that sound reasonable to you guys?
Yeah, I was kind of in my mind going in that direction, like, to be very transparent, I'm a little overwhelmed by the board still. And by trying to wrap my head around, like, what would each of these task forces be doing, it's much easier for me to think about, okay, we need a working group to start defining what membership means. We need a working group to just keep the lights on operations. Like, there are some very, in my view, like small scale essential things that need ongoing attention, but also development. Like we need to know what we're offering new members, but we also need to know, like, what makes them a member. What are we inviting them to give and receive? And I think what I'm hearing today is that we have a lot more clarity about what we are going to be offering, which is the co-op, whatever Rob just summarized, and the other part of the mural board. And I'm losing my train of thought, but in terms of what seems important, like in the moment, we need a governance structure. We need to keep defining membership so that we can open the door for more membership and participation. And we need to keep the lights on.
Yeah.
I sort of second everything Saya said. I've also been a little intimidated by the Miro board, but I also think the Miro board is really wonderful because I think it will be very important maybe when we do have a MVP and more members, and then we'll be able to allocate more people to different task forces. Um
Yeah.
yeah, what else? I really like it, and I think we will become more reliant on the Miro board soon. But I still feel like maybe we just need to learn to walk a little better. Um, I also feel like if a bunch of people did join, I don't know if maybe they will be. I'm not sure. Like, will they be oriented enough to join a task force? And will they feel like they came here for X, but we're giving them Y? So yeah, defining membership again
Hmm.
so that we give them X. Um,
Mm.
and I
Before I
think
forget, do you mind if I mention something? Just thinking like, yeah, so the task force and the mirror board in that probably wouldn't be there for new members necessarily. Like, new members would not join a circle or a task force straight away. So yeah, they do need to have other experiences other than that. So these weekly meetings might need to also adjust in with the governance structure, like to decide what's the purpose of a weekly meeting, or how many different types of meetups you guys want to
Hmm.
have each week or each fortnight or month. And then yeah, so that's definitely where people can make decisions there from the group that's already here.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, because I think, right, like Sias talked about this dream, and I have like this very similar dream. Like I think, to a certain point, it'd be wonderful if the community meetings are, can be more like what we're, trying to do today. Like more like, hey, people come in, we share, we have an exercise, like we do like, okay, let's go over our needs and offerings. Let's go over, operations. Let's go over, who has a new, whole member profile, that they want to share, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think doing what we are doing now is like the way, I mean, this feels great, is the way to get there.
there are lots of big questions, but I feel really positive about all the members here, and everything that you've created in this Miro board makes me very excited and hopeful. And I feel so shitty that I'm gonna dip out now because yeah, these are good questions and I don't have answers. I'm not leaving you guys with much today. Sorry.
Yeah. I mean, I think I don't know that it's necessary to have all the answers to these. I think that we're coming up with I think we have come up with a lot of answers today. Actually, it feels like, and a lot of clarity, and again, a lot of like consensus. And then
Yeah.
so that's really helpful, and then we can move forward and answer a lot of these questions.
Basil says he got to run. Bye, Basil. Thanks for being
Bye.
here.
Bye, Basil. Thanks for jumping in.
And Zoe, I'm so glad you're here. Thanks for staying for a while.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
good to
thanks,
see you
Zoe.
guys. Have a
Yeah,
great
it's
day,
great to see you
everyone.
too.
Yeah, see you next time or next week is Skillshare, but we could also spend some time talking about this if you want, because I don't have a whole lecture planned. We could chat too. Yeah,
Yeah, but next week, yeah, is Zoe Skillshare.
maybe I'll just
Cool.
do like, I don't know, an hour talking about social media, and people could bring their own stories and struggles and questions, and then we could even talk for another hour thereafter, maybe for about governance or the upcoming proposal. Who knows?
Yeah. I know, and I want to talk about, you know, we'll see what Christine and Sai and I, you know, do for the last half hour, but at some point it'd be really great to talk about like the value exchange, the value, all the types of value exchange, because I think that's a really kind of rich conversation.
Very exciting.
Yeah.
Okay, well,
Bye, Zoe.
that was
Thanks,
awesome.
Zoe.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Okay, Saya, what do you?
Just goofing off.
Yeah.
Whatever we do for the next 22 minutes.
Yeah, what do we do for the next 22 minutes? Well, I'm gonna sit down first. See, it's something I'm gonna do. But yeah, what do y'all think? Do either of you have opinions?
Opinions.
Still have our let me think about my opinion.
Yeah, same.
Well, we could do that activity, like maybe we could do the activity of value exchange ideas we would like to explore. Like, because I don't think that's anything we've specifically talked about together. Or is that too much for the brains?
I could go there. It's not something that I have. I don't have much to bring to the table. I think I'm
Yeah.
interested, but if someone said, oh, there's this model, I mean, and Rob, you've done a little bit of this. If you were like, well, there's this model and this model and this model, then I could say what I think about each, but I don't.
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm thinking about it in a certain way. Maybe value exchange models is another question. I mean, maybe we could is there any, my thought is like, is there any sort of keep the lights on stuff that we want to go over first, and then maybe we can, you know, the end of the meeting, we can kind of maybe dig a little bit into that kind of value exchange topic, and you know, it might even be helpful to delve into it and being like, well, what are we talking about here? You know, with value exchange, and when I say a model, or when I say a category, what do I mean, and what is that, you know, and how does that differ from what another person means?
Well,
but
we're still
yeah.
recording, so is there anything that we can record that is meaningful to people? Or you can pause the recording, right? So it doesn't matter.
Yeah, we can pause the recording, but we can just go. It doesn't have to all be, you know, gold.
Okay. All right.
As far as the like keep the lights on situation, you know, the most robust parts of our exactly is the, you know, leading the meetings, writing the emails, sending the emails. Those are the things that are really ongoing. Skillshare's once a month. Zoe, I believe, is back on as the coordinator monthly. Basil updated the calendar, I believe.
Mhm.
Believe he stayed in that role of the calendar manager for the moment. So I'm not seeing anything in particular that, okay, well, so June, yeah, that's true. Rob, you're on for sending, and anyone could write content. Zoe may want to write something before her Skillshare. That would be a question.
Yeah. Well, when I just put myself in here, but then I can get in touch with, you know, it's just so that way there's somebody in here, and then I can get in touch with Zoe.
Okay.
Yeah. And yeah, and you know, just to name, you know, Christine, if there's ever any, like, if you're ever like, oh, there's this something that I, you know, want to write on, you know, or I have this, you know, topic that has to do with what we're doing. And, you know, it might be interesting to people, then like, feel free to write the email. And then that week's email comes from Christine.
Okay. I'll think about it. Like probably for the Skillshare one, I mean, unless we've got some takeaways from today, but that's a separate email, right? Like there's a follow-up email, or is that, no, it's just always one?
No, usually it's just the one, and sometimes it includes some notes from the previous meeting, like a celebration
Okay.
or you know, some of the highlights from the last week's meeting, or you know, something I learned from last week's meeting. We've done some of that, like reflecting back as at the same time that the email invites people to the next meeting or the next Skillshare. So yeah, if you want to write anything along those lines, I think that would be great. I could also imagine, I'm not sure how many people know that you are like that this is a part of your studies, and that like you could write a little bit like, who is Christine? You know,
Yeah.
that could be cool.
Yeah. I also popped something in the meeting notes today, which is, we don't have to take action on it now, but I do think at a certain point in the near future, we probably want to segment people in the email list and also in Discord by like people who are active members, because some of the weekly meetings, you know, lately have gotten more into like, hey, you know, like this is our agenda and these are the operational details and all of that, which is really good. Like people who are active need to know that. But then there's a whole other subset, you know, especially, you know, in the emails of people who are like interested and want to follow along, but they aren't going to want like nitty gritty details. And if we send too many, then at a certain point, they're going to unsubscribe. So, yeah, so I think that, you know, and then also like if there's that, you know, to sort of like, if we say, hey, these are the active contributors, then those are people we can send reminder emails to, you know, those are the people we can just slam, you know, with like all the information, and it's fine because they're saying, no, I want to be involved.
Mhm.
So just kind of putting that in there into our field.
Also, is there like capacity? I don't know what email system you're using, but is there capacity to have an email list for governance circle, you know, all those different ones like that? Yeah.
We can segment people into however many, into 20 different circles, into, we can schedule, you know, we can schedule things to go out if there's like a, you know, governance meeting. Well, we can't, we'd have to go to the paid plan if we want to schedule ahead of time. Yeah. But yes, we can certainly can.
Which system are you using?
Right now we're using Zoho campaigns.
Oh, I don't know that one.
Yeah, it's, you know, like Zoho
Okay.
is this whole, you know, kind of you know, productivity business, you know, organizational running, you know, system. And yeah, it works pretty well, and it's really cheap. Like right now we're actually on the free plan. So that's the thing. It's not the best, sorry, Zoho. But it is inexpensive and works well enough not to piss me off enough to make me leave. Zoho campaigns.
Yep.
Yeah. I don't know, yeah, it's, you know, okay.
I got used to it.
Yeah.
But I had a learning curve the way I would with any new like email platform. It was fine to learn.
Yeah.
No
It's
big
at least
deal.
as good as MailChimp, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. MailChimp.
Okay.
And I don't think
Yeah.
MailChimp is that great. We call it MailChump.
MailChimp. What
Gets
do
a
we
bit
call
old, yeah.
constant contact? In constant contact.
These are good. These are good email marketing in jokes. All right. Should we jump into some talk about value exchange? I'm excited about it.
Sure.
Oh,
Christine, anything else, before doing that?
Well, we didn't really like run by people the member token portal. I mean, I did mention about focusing on that as a product, but I didn't really hear much response. It sort of seemed like people liked the idea, but yeah, to me, I'm just curious to know more about what people actually think about doing it that way. So using the HSC co-op as like the place where we try things and explore, because we're doing this like as part of systems change, like we see this as a way of participating in system change. And then that way it's like that then becomes valuable for other people to see that record, but also think about trying it for themselves with their own groups in whatever fashion that might be. So yeah, maybe it's just a sense that people were fine with it, but there might be more to discuss there.
Yeah, I mean, I can speak to, yeah, I mean, my impression, like at least what I felt like was that I kind of put that into the summary. In some ways in that aspect, at least, kind of like using these tokenomics, and people seem fine with it. I actually feel like that's kind of has been part and parcel, of what we have been talking about, it's, in as much as like that's a principal way that we are creating this co-op. And then the last thing to say, and I think I mentioned this to you before, but I think that people had really brought that up specifically as far as like, hey, we're developing this and then using it as an offering. And I had kind of like not really been pursuing that, so much, because this sort of like way of thinking of like, oh, let's just like do it first and then see if it works and then, and then think about that. But like, you've kind of had my mind shifted a little bit around it, from our conversations. So I think people would be, stoked about that, that aspect. Yeah, Saya, what do you have any thoughts on that?
I mean, I'm in support. I don't know that there's anything to do differently about that. The only thing we could be doing differently is like somehow even more like documentation about what we're doing, but we're already recording every meeting. We're already taking pretty extensive notes about as things develop. So it doesn't seem like it's a decision per se, but that it is always an option, right? As we develop what that member token value exchange thing is, it will become something we can package, explain, share, teach on. In our visioning process that we did over the winter, I think you had a chance to look at least some of those materials. I agree with Rob that emerged, that it is sort of a value in the larger group, that what we're doing is transferable to others learning or others also taking on some of these practices.
maybe that's something to consider. Like how do we not track, but like how do we create resources or synthesize understanding as we progress on like the actual process itself.
Mm.
You know, we could create structures for, you know, gathering feedback, for example, where periodically there's like a 3-question form for all members, like, did you do your value exchange this month? How did it go? What did you like? What did you dislike? You know, and then we make adjustments, then the whole model can adjust and evolve, and then at some point it will be clear what kind of output is possible to other groups, or
Mhm.
that some of our members do a teach-in with another group, like, hey, this is what we do, this is how we do it.
Hmm. Yeah, like is that something just theoretically, do you think that like you would like to do something like that, or does that sort of type of thing interest you as being a liaison or being a connector between
It does
groups?
eventually, but I think that I don't know if other people feel this too, like I how do I say this? Sorry, my phone. I feel like a real strong desire to have things be happening. And Rob knows I always go back to this. I'm like, operations, what are the tasks we're taking on? Who's committing to what? What's the next step and who's doing it? Like,
Yeah.
so rather than visioning some down the road thing where I go teach another group how to do this, I'm more interested in talking about, like, I'm excited about developing what defines a member and what does that mean? And what do we expect of people? And what do we offer them, for example? That's a task force I would have put my name on, but I don't know what task force that was. If that makes sense, which I know I could add a task force. I could make my own, but, yeah.
Yeah. Rob, do you have any thoughts on?
I mean, I think that, yeah, I think for me, you know, like the base piece is really, you know, to be, you know, thinking about that as, you know, as we go along, to have that idea of this, you know, being an offering as part of how, you know, as part of like the creation and development process as we go along. So I don't exactly know like what we would do now different. You know, than what we might do. But I think that there is a way where there's a base kind of, you know, a shift or addition for me where I say, oh, okay, like as we're going along, you know, we can be thinking about that within that kind of framework and mindset. Yeah, but that's really, you know, I don't know any other kind of specifics, because I think we're, you know, yeah, we're built basically like required to build build and develop what it is that we'd be offering anyways, you know, and test it. And so I think that those kind of base aspects of like build it together, test it together, you know, come out with the next, you know, version, you know, beta test as a group, collaboratory laboratory, and, you know, go back together. So I think that but I do think that there's a way, you know, for me that's helpful to say, okay, and then as we go along, how could this apply to different types of organizations, you know, so that way when we, you know, and right, you know, make documentation in that sense. So that way when if we end up somewhere, you know, then we're already kind of ahead of the game as far as that's concerned.
Yeah, it'd be great, like instead of in 2 years looking back going, oh, I wish we had have like recorded this or, you know, made a few little tweaks so that and also with new members coming in, if we say, okay, look, I think maybe we should try to get like 40 members to do this thing where we start feeling like there's real exchanges happening regularly. And that's like the test group. I mean, maybe people won't resonate with being called a test group. Like we might need a different name, like, yeah, like the collaboratory laboratory phase or whatever. Like we can name this phase where people are on the understanding that it is exploratory, but that there is benefits to participating in this exploratory phase. Because if they get you know, rewarded for that. So I think that there wouldn't be a problem in finding 40 new members, but it's about finding people that you want to have joining a group and people who have like enough of an open mind and thoughtfulness and have some qualities like that that will mean that it goes fairly smoothly or it goes as in the direction that we're hoping for. So there might be just some parameters like thinking about that. But do you guys feel like there's this big hurdle of like we don't have enough something in order to invite new people, like a larger group of people?
I mean, I think to me that's just that's a strategic question, you know, which is like, when do we feel like we're ready to and start inviting people? Yeah, I mean, I don't know that there's like one exact answer. I just think it's you know, what we think is the right time, you know, like I wouldn't say like, hey, next week let's start inviting people, you know, because I don't think we're you know, we're there yet. But then we also don't want to say like, oh well, member portal has to be all done and working perfectly and everything. We have to have all our governance and we have to have 12 circles and we have to, you know, so I just think, you know, it's when we say, oh yeah, we're clear enough on what we're doing. We have something, you know, so like when somebody comes in, they have something to come into.
Yeah, like I would be happy to work on some sort of, I think that's why we put onboarding as one of the task forces, which is working out maybe for that minimum group level that we could aim for, that the onboarding for even just those people is going to look different than onboarding down the track. So it would just be like the first version of onboarding those members to grow the group so that the group can actually start experimenting to a higher level. So yeah, it is like when I said which piece comes first, it is a bit like that. Like they're all like sort of connected and like, but I think that's what the benefit of strategy is that you do piece it down so you know that all the moving parts, like this one's going to push this one, this one's going to push that one, and the whole thing starts to move more in the direction. Yeah. And yeah, so governance, I think it's still relevant to have a strategy circle, like just even from starting now, even if it's like people can't put into a lot, like it's starting with Robin and I, but anyone else can join. But we need the governance circle to say like as well, like how they want to hear from the strategy circle. You know, like what, yeah, like where should the strategy circle come in and interact with all the members? Like that would be something to think about as well. But yeah, I guess I just want to avoid like thinking about things like for weeks and months on end, just personally, because I would like to be building some things, sort of like what I really would like to be doing. Yeah. Mm.
Yeah.
I'm gonna repeat myself also. There, we have a thing. We're not just building a thing, it is a thing. And it is actually functioning for people who use it. So I'm in multiple value exchanges with members over the last number of months. Both ways, I receive, I give. It's happened because I'm proactive, because I go after those people and I say, hey, I would love to receive what you seem to have as a skill, and vice versa. So, and then there happened to be 20-something people in the member portal who at some point felt in alignment with this vision. They're not coming to meetings. They're not visibly exchanging any value with anybody. What would it take to re-enroll them? What would it take to just be like, hey, you guys jumped in on this. It's cool. It's actually happening now, maybe more than when you first started. I don't know, because I wasn't there. But like, I just like to say that there is a thing. It's not only that there's not a thing and we're trying to make the thing, there is a thing. It's just not being very well utilized by very many people. It's being very well utilized by me and Rob. Right? There is a coordinate. There is an experiment in value exchange. How many people are actually entering their give and their what they gave to the community every month? Very few. It's interesting. So that's
Yeah.
mine.
Yeah. Thank you. That's a good.
Do you
It's
think
a good
that you have
take on it.
any thoughts already about how the existing thing could move? Like and be
Honestly, this is the first time I've thought about like, what if we re-enroll the people who are already on some level in alignment? They already took the time to put their profile in the member portal. At some point in the last 2 years, they did that. So that's actually pretty cool. It's actually a group of people who said yes on some level and then got distracted, got busy, didn't know what was happening, don't know what's happening, don't read the emails. Okay.
maybe it's not the right kind of value exchange for them either. Like maybe we need to hear from people directly who have disengaged. Like what value were they getting, or what were they hoping to get and that they didn't get? What could they, just ask some questions like that
Yeah.
in a little survey, or talk to
Yeah,
them.
and I have a lot of that. I mean, I have a lot of that information because, as people were coming in and going out, right? Like I was in contact with them. So it isn't to say that like we can't do that in a more formal way and formal survey, but I have a starting place,
Cool.
for that. I mean, I think to sum it up, it just, people weren't there are people who are, want to come in and like, be the builders. And then there are people who want to come in and be the, the users and the testers. So there's just different like levels of contribution.
Yeah.
I think, my sense is, for the most part across the board, people, love the idea. And believe in the idea, and in like, yeah, we gotta come together and we gotta like, help each other. We gotta like figure out how to, share our resources. I just, yeah, I think those are the people who have jumped in. It's just, what is their like, what is their participation level and how, and yeah, like I said, how much, does a person want to be building the thing, and how much does a person just like want to use that thing, and then where in between. So,
Yeah, I think it's important, like how to frame it initially to people as well. Like if with like how, because if we say we've got a few types of value exchange going on, but we want to develop more. That's different than saying, come join our co-op, this is what we do. Because people then come in and say, and try it out, like it's like a bit more like passive, rather than the first one I mentioned, which is coming in with an understanding of, let's build this thing together in a way, or let's try different things, let's not rely only on the organizers. I'm not saying that this applies, I'm thinking about future members, basically, like people joining in the future, not the ones who've already joined. Like how to frame it to people more broadly. But still obviously having enough options that it looks like there's things going on that they would potentially like to be part of. You know, like it gives the frame a flavor and a movement. So you've got lists of different types of value to exchange, but it hasn't been broken down into ways that can be recorded and basically tokenized, if that's still one of the things that we're doing. So
yeah, well, it has, but I think that there's more to explore there.
yeah.
Yeah, as far as like, you know, all the different kinds of value and how it can be, yeah, how it can be broken down. Yeah, I mean, I think what we're talking about here is this basic, is one of the basic strategic questions, which is when do we go out and start, trying to bring people in, either re-enroll or share what we're doing with others. I mean, it just seems like a very, it's a good strategic question, and sounds like a primary one for the strategy circle, whoever's in that. Because
because deciding like, oh, we need 40 people, let's aim for 40 people, that's a big strategic decision.
Yeah, definitely. And what do we want to have in place, by then, and then what is our message that we're sending? So yeah, I've got that down in the notes. So yeah, let's in the strategy circle. So it sounds like, at least for now, the strategy circle has 2 members, myself and Christine, and then whoever else wants to jump in, which may be like other people, I feel like it's something where people can, jump in for a meeting, and then it's not, as long as you have like 1 or 2 people holding it, then it does seem like something where folks can come in and out. And maybe that's, how it works now. Maybe that's not how it works forever, but does that seem reasonable?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. If each circle would, would invite participation, you just would want to, put the word out with a little advance notice. Hey, we're meeting, or we're going to take this portion of the HSC business meeting and go into breakout rooms, and whoever wants to go in strategy, go there, and whoever wants to go in governance, go there.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea for the meetings that we already have on the books. I mean, sometimes they could just be like community meetings like we're having, or like we're, like some of the stuff that we're talking about, but every once in a while it could just be like a circles meeting, or
It could be
hour circles.
Right. Or the first circle, go into circles, come back with some proposals for the whole group, let's vote and then let's decide on the next tasks and then let's go do them.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. What do we think? Anything else?
I think that's it. Next week is always going to do Skillshare. And the rest of the time, like she said, could be a conversation, I guess, if anyone has some clarity about what like that conversation topic could be. We could check in about that through email or Discord, before next week. And then I guess we need to decide who's leading the next meeting after that.
Yeah. I'm happy to lead it since you're facilitating this one. Unless you feel like you're like, no, I didn't get to facilitate enough of this one. I mean, if you feel drawn to it,
I didn't
then
do
I'm
much.
always happy for you to facilitate.
I didn't do much today. But that's okay. I don't need to do much. I'm doing it because it's good learning for me. I just need to check the date.
Yeah. Yeah, and you and I can be in touch. You can ponder over that for the next couple of days.
Okay.
And see what feels light. The other thing is that I think, right, maybe we'll have to just talk about this, and that maybe it's a proposal, maybe it's something, Christine, where you might have thoughts, but the question of the timing for the regular meeting, right? Because right now it's 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern time. People are used to that. That does, allow, it feels like, European folks sort of to get in with that being too late. It is not right, like that, especially that first hour is not great for Christine. So that's something for us to think about as well. What do we want to do with the meeting time? Do we want to push it back an hour more regularly? Do we want to keep it the same? Can Christine come for the second hour? Does it, I don't quite have the answer to that, but I do think it's a good question to ask, since you are, like a big participant.
Yeah. Would it, do you think at this point it would be the best strategy to keep the weekly meetings as a place for discussing and organizing at that higher level? Or do you think people would rather it go back to it being more of a member experience and just keep it as that, like a member experience hour every week type thing? And then we have like another separate hour where then we do structural, yeah, more of that sort of stuff.
I'll speak for myself, but I think I'm reading the group, at least some of the group, is that we need to very soon reduce the amount of time on like big picture visioning structural discussions. I find it overwhelming. It's a lot to try and understand and digest. And that's why I think shifting into specific tasks and like a proposal model will be helpful. It's not that I don't want to know what's being considered or what the elements are. It's just like a lot.
Yeah, it's a good point. I think that there's something about, like the kind of starting to shift back to that like member experience, that seems beneficial. That seems like a good idea to me, because, there is a way where, where we're like building culture as well. That feels really important, and that we are still sort of a group that's small enough to be like this pod, or to be a group that can exchange value without the need for tokens. And I think that there's something in there that's important for us to continue to, to cultivate. And I think people dig on that. And yeah. And so, and also a way for new folks to just kind of jump in and start, and start to, vibe and, like, I think it feels important, right? And then I think along with that, then does come more of this, like the operations, not the big picture sort of like strategy, but the operations, which is like, hey, let's go around needs and offerings, let's go, doing these things, but that are more kind of in this member experience kind of way. That's my thought. And then the different circles can, again, we can use breakout rooms, or depending on how many people are at the meeting, or different circles can just have their own time, to meet.
Yeah, I guess the trick is like, yeah, just getting the existing members, if anyone does want to step into those organizational groups and circles, to do that, like at this point. Yeah, but maybe we don't need to spend every meeting, like the traditional weekly meeting, doing that.
Yeah.
Unless you want to split it down like hour to hour, like maybe 1 hour is enough to cover that member experience type stuff and just have a little connection, have a little inspiration, maybe talk about a few topics, but that's an hour is enough to do that. And then by not having a 2-hour meeting every week, then people have an extra hour if they have time, whether it's directly after that first hour or on a different day, that then they can then put into structural things that they care about.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting idea, right? And as we've gone along, I have sort of thought, do we continue to make this the community meeting 2 hours, or do we make it an hour and a half or an hour, or like, like in that model that you talked about, Christine, the first hour is like our community meeting, and then people who want to, stay for more of the circles or operational stuff can stay.
Yeah.
It's a good question, because I think as we've gone along, I think people, have been sort of like only able to come for an hour, more often than they did. I don't know if that's because of, like there's been less sort of like of that member experience, kind of juicy aspect, or just people are like, hey, I only have, a certain amount of time to put towards it.
Well, a 1 hour experience is nice and neat. I mean, especially if you use things like breakout rooms, like for not necessarily for circles, but for things like value exchange, or that type of member experience, where they're on the call, you can just sort of maximize the time if there's different people who want to talk or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know that I have the answer right now, but it's good to ponder, for us to, process. If that works.
Okay.
Unless were you thinking about like, no, let's try and come to some decisions now on that, or just or sort of just talk it over?
I don't need a decision, but the next day or two would be good to have some like a thought on that. Even just leading up to next week's meeting with Zoe's, like, is her section 1 hour that she's doing, or is it full 2 hours? I think she said 1 hour, right?
Yeah, I mean, we've been you know, most of them had been 2 hours, but she said one, you know, that it might just be 1 hour. It was 1 hour last time. You know, some of that might depend on how, you know, how many people show up and how many people, you know, are really talking a lot about it, but it could just be an hour. But I don't think I don't think that was decided specifically.
No.
I'm just putting this in the notes.
Yeah, because I think it's great, like Saya and Zoe and people like that facilitating the 1 hour member experience portion of it. Like that's great. I can see that really working nicely for people who are coming in, like new members or and then we're not overwhelming new people with bigger pieces. That's my feeling at this point.
Right. Unless they just want to, you know, geek out on bigger pieces because that's what they're into, but that is a total or
Yeah. That's I think having a member in around each one is good. So it is like a process where you decide to go into that place. Or you can just come and share with others and have your juicy time in the group.
Yeah, and we'd had this sort of framework of like the first third was like the human heartbeat, and the second third was the, you know, structural heartbeat, and then the last third was the operational heartbeat. You know, which is nice, but we may not, that's, you know, that, you know, practically wise, yeah, it may work to just say like, hey, let's just do our, you know, let's kind of do that experience thing for an hour, right? And that experience is going to have, you know, lots of opportunities for that human heartbeat to come in. But then we also have these sort of like, you know, juicier member, you know, like where we're like doing the stuff, you know, we're doing the exchanges and the talking and the, you know, needs and offerings and all of that, rather than the operations of like, you know, like we have been doing. And yeah, maybe that's just the sort of phase we needed to be in. Speaking of phases, I know I want to go for my walk before it gets dark.
yeah.
My brain's starting
Let's rock out. I
Cool.
just put at the bottom of the meeting notes like possible proposals for next week, like some of the things that were just floated. There are probably things that were said earlier that I didn't remember. But anyways, this stuff we can circle back to. So yes. Great. Thank you both. And thanks everyone who was here earlier. And thanks anyone who's actually watching this video all the way to the end. You're awesome. You're so awesome.
You are awesome. Yeah, join next time live.
All right. Bye. Take care.